what are we trying to do? It's pretty ambitious. What we're trying to do is to redefine what it means to be a first-person shooter. Our goal is to put a stake in the heart of all those cliches you've been playing for years in first-person shooters, the linear corridors, the very static environments, and the cookie-cutter AIs. Now, we understand that's a pretty lofty goal, and it's really going to be up to you guys to decide whether we succeed.
Was betrayed by the weak. So I ask you, my friend, if your life were the prize, would you kill the innocent? Would you sacrifice your humanity?
The general premise of the series is sort of as a retrospect of a game, to deliver the story of how it became, what it means, and how it is beyond that of a game, beyond that of a movie, beyond that of a television program. It is art at its finest. Although existing for decades, video games as a narrative offer a unique experience. Bioshock is an example of great ambition and innovation with a whole lot of creativity. Approaching the 10-year anniversary of what is one of the greatest narrative games of all time, let us take a journey to the very depths of the bottom of the sea, where dreams and aspiration meet greed and destruction. Acclaimed as the spiritual successor to System Shock, it took inspiration from works of Ayn Rand and many objective ideologies. It aimed to change the way FPS were meant to be played and experienced. At its core, Bioshock is an FPS shooter where you as a nameless protagonist must go from one objective to another. Throughout the game, you discover an assortment of various weapons, each unique from a simple shotgun to a grenade launcher, made by the citizens of Rapture. Perhaps the most unique aspect being the plasmids.
You alright, boyo? First time plasmid's a real kick from a mule, but there's nothing like a fistful of lightning now, is there?
The ability to possess lightning or even summon a swarm of bees to attack your foe. Although minuscule, Bioshock possesses many RPG elements such as upgradable weapons, upgradable plasmids, and a photo mechanic that allows you to grow stronger and obtain unique tonics. Perhaps the strongest element of the game, Bioshock delivers what I consider the greatest dystopian story in the last few decades. The element of mystery and discovery is apparent throughout.
They told me, son, you're special. You were born to do great things. You know what? They were right.
After a plane crash, you end up in this underwater city. You are led by Atlas to find an escape from the underwater prison. Throughout the journey, we encounter many of the citizens of Rapture. Some who were drove to insanity, and some who were never sane to begin with.
It is accomplished!
The story is told through the city itself, the decrepitated walls, the shattered and defiled art, remnants of something that was once beautiful, although never shown. The story goes beyond that of the canvas that it is presented. It is shown through various audio diaries recapturing many of the citizens' story, from arrival to many inevitable departures.
Why do they wear those masks?
I just want to go to
Maybe
sleep.
there's a part of them that remembers how they used to be, how they used to look, and they're ashamed.
The story is not a typical good versus evil story. There are layers and layers of sociological and philosophical themes. Neither Fontaine nor Ryan are definitively wrong or just. Rather, it's up to the player to blindly go about his way in an attempt to escape the underwater city. You find yourself with a lack of choice. You as a player have very few decisions that can inevitably be made. I would be doing a great injustice to the series without mentioning the Big Daddies and the Little Sisters. The Big Daddies are the cover star of the Bioshock series. At its foundation, the Big Daddy represent the boss battle, a tougher enemy that the player will inevitably face throughout their journey, but it is the symbolism behind them that makes them special. The relationship between father and daughter, an undying loyalty to protect, makes the Big Daddy perhaps the most beautiful creatures in an otherwise torn apart world. When a Big Daddy is defeated, you are confronted with a choice. A choice hidden behind two button presses, but the meaning behind them goes beyond that.
No! 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 No!
Do we harvest the little sister, inevitably killing them to gain more Adam and become more powerful? Or do we rescue the little sisters for a decent amount of Adam, reassured by Tenenbaum that these are still little girls? The decision will reflect your character and change the ending. The setting of Rapture is incredibly interesting. A city at the bottom of the sea, surrounded by the ocean. A once thriving metropolis torn apart through war and greed. To expand on those points, we must begin with the founder, Andrew Ryan.
I am Andrew Ryan, and I'm here to ask you a question.
A man who believes in ownership, a free market, and the pursuit of self-interest. For many years, there was a period of renaissance where many citizens were able to own their own business, their own property. And naturally, not everyone was so lucky. The idea of a utopian society does have many flaws. It begins with wealth. As many Rapture citizens flourished, some did not. And naturally, a class system was established. Those who lived in Apollo Heights, and those who suffered at Fontaine's Home for the Poor. Some businesses failed, and lacked help from a government because Rapture did not have one. There was a demand to escape. However, Ryan forbid exit. People were left helpless and without hope. Enter Fontaine, whose humble beginning and initial impressions helped give the poor a leader.
Fontaine's got Adam, and everybody wants it. Ryan's got a whole lot of talk and a nice suit. Even down here, any idiot can see which way the wind is blowing.
Working originally as a dealer in fish, he owned a smuggling business, smuggling items such as Bibles, which Ryan was against. Fontaine soon flourished in wealth and used his natural ability of deception to become a prosperous businessman. The growing tension of the two men eventually led to civil war and the destruction of Rapture. One thing I love about Bioshock was the grounded yet believable science fiction. The city is run by Adam, the vice of Rapture. It is why plasmids exist. It is derived from an underwater sea slug, discovered and manufactured by Tenenbaum, and marketed by Fontaine. It was able to rewrite genetic code, change physical appearance in an instance. It appeased to the very selfish nature encouraged by Andrew Ryan. However, it held a very negative side effect for those who indulged. With it, Adam became the foundation of the city, more valuable than the currency itself, and also more demanding in terms of supply. With it gave birth to the Little System. Modified by Tenenbaum, the Little Sisters were able to harvest and recycle Adam, making them a prime target for the now known splicers. The creation of the Big Daddies followed. Big Daddies can be summarized as slaves, seduced by mental brainwash. Their appearance often distracts from the fact that they are still people. There are a lot of chains of events that occur prior to the actual game of Bioshock.
I started to argue with a man, and then I remembered who signed my checks.
No need to thank me for jamming the transmissions of those boors, Atlas and Ryan. Let them have their squabble. The artist, yes, the artist knows there is richer earth to till.
Sometimes they look at me. They don't stop. Sometimes they smile.
I love Mr. Ryan, but I love Ratchet. If I have to kill one to save the other, so be it.
For many years, video game characters were one-dimensional, acting as messengers or guides. Limitations in technology or relevance to the plot were mainly the reason. Bioshock, however, features some of the greatest and well-developed characters in gaming history. An amazing ensemble of well-developed, motivated, and different characters helped to develop a picture of how Rapture used to be. It is no wonder there exists a novel that helps to delve into the characters even more. Learning about these characters remind me of an episode of The Twilight Zone entitled 5 Characters in Search of an Exit, where these 5 completely random characters like a clown, ballerina, and a general are thrown into what seems like an empty abyss. Unknowing of who they are, where they are, and how they got there.
5 improbable entities stuck together into a pit of darkness. No logic, no reason, no explanation. Just a prolonged nightmare in which fear, loneliness, and the unexplainable walk hand in hand through the shadows.
They refer to each other through the roles they play rather than their names. It's a great ending, but the parallels of Rapture's ensemble is very similar. Trapped at the bottom of the sea, you get a sense of loss, despair. You get a sense of desperation. The scientist, the doctor, they all play a part without limitations. Their behavior, no matter how different, leads to the conclusion that this one grand utopian is no longer that. It is a cocoon of what it once was.
America and capitalism are perishing for lack of a moral base. The destroyer is the morality of altruism.
What is the greatest lie ever created? What is the most vicious obscenity ever perpetrated on mankind? Slavery, the Holocaust, dictatorship. No. It's the tool with which all that wickedness is built. Altruism.
Altruism holds that man has no right to exist for his own sake, that service to others is the only moral justification of his existence, and that self-sacrifice is his highest moral duty.
Never mind your own needs, they say. Think of the needs of whoever. Of the state, of the poor, of the army, of the king, of God. This goes on.
Which holds that man's life and work belong to the state, to society, to the group, the gang, the race, the nation, and that the state may dispose of him in any way it pleases for the sake of whatever it deems to be its own tribal collective good. And ask yourself whether any of it would be possible if man had not accepted the idea that man is a sacrificial animal to be immolated for the sake of the public good.
And so, I asked myself, in what country was there a place for men like me? Men who refused to say yes to the parasites and the doubters. Men who believed that work was sacred and property rights inviolate. And then, one day, the happy answer came to me, my friends. There was no country for people like me. And that was the moment I decided to build one.
It is no secret that Andrew Ryan is based off philosopher Ayn Rand, who is credited for the idea of objectivism, which Ryan himself believes in. In summary, objectivism is about reason. It is a grounded idea that the world is what it is. You cannot change it. Ryan himself juxtaposed many of society's ideologies at the time. He was against government, but not a communist. Of himself, he was a man who believed what he owned, what he worked for, should be his and his alone. Throughout the world of Rapture, you hear the speech entitled Altruism, an amazing speech dictated by Andrew Ryan, which in summary criticizes and challenges the idea of altruism. If we act in our own self-interest, then it will benefit the world on a larger scale. This idea of a great chain that unites us. A scientist should not be constrained by religion. An artist should not be constrained by regulation. We work for our own self-interest and should work for what we love.
Andrew Ryan offers you a toast. To Rapture, 1959. May it be our finest year.
There is a constant debate in the philosophical world around free will. which is defined by the power of acting without the constraint of necessity or fate, the ability to act at one's own discretion. Does free will exist? There are so many debates and scientific studies that exist, but Bioshock tackles free will internally and externally. Let's begin with our protagonist, whose name is Jack. He bears tattoos on his wrists amongst entering Rapture, which can be eluded as a prisoner. For the most part, his tattoos are never explained. They can only be perceived by the player. In the mid part of the game, you learn Jack was brainwashed by a phrase delivered by Atlas.
Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find control? Would you kindly find? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
Would you kindly? With it, this phase guided not only Jack, but you, the player. It guided us in a journey that we not only related with our own character, we were the character of Jack. And we never guided to love or hate Andrew Ryan. But for me, it hurt when I ended up killing him. As he screams,
"A man chooses, a slave obeys."
A man chooses, a slave obeys. He is proclaiming not to Jack, but to us, the player. Unlike a movie, we have control. Literally, we have the power of the controller, but much like Jack, we are under the control of...
Nice work, Bio.
Atlas, and acted like a puppet. When it comes to free will, Bioshock used the platform of gaming and delivered an experience I had never felt in any book, movie, or any other game out there. Discussing Bioshock and art can be rather cumbersome, because the game is a never-ending artistic masterpiece, which makes it difficult to pinpoint one part. I will start with the setting of Rapture. It feels alive. At any moment you can look out the window and see a school of fish or any other aquatic beauty. Even at Rapture's worst, the city is gorgeous. In a lot of ways, the artistic elements foreshadow many pivotal plot points of the game. Some examples include names of certain places you will eventually visit in Rapture, posters on the walls, including the famous Who is Atlas poster. The propaganda and advertisements are abundant, which really shows the nature of Rapture as a flourishing utopia. Art Deco, which is a French art design, originated in the 1920s that is synonymous with the Prohibition, flappers, jazz music, and is where Rapture gets its mold. The use of bronze coloring is apparent on every rustic Big Daddy who shambles the floors of Rapture. One thing Ayn Rand and Andrew Ryan shared was this idea that man is capable of greatness. Art Deco reflects this with its style and uniqueness.
Use of stylish, new age lettering. Verticals which soared upward as skyscrapers, surmounted by stepped pyramidal shapes.
Although existing in a confined underwater space, Bioshock features various locations, each with different scenery that reflects the character for whose domain you visit. The trees in Arcadia which breathe life into the city. The medical shambles of a doctor whose craft evolved into a disaster. The glowing neon lights in the home of the artist.
Welcome to Fort Frolic.
And the hellish red lighting in the very depths of Hephaestus. There is something beautiful that could otherwise be missed if you never stop to look. Whenever someone debates whether video games are art, they probably have never seen Bioshock. Much like a CGI or animated movie, everything is thought out, psychologically placed to support the plot and setting. Various corpses decaying in a war-torn city, or on the backdrop of an otherwise beautiful ocean. The faces of the splicers show suffering while still instilling fear towards the player. I would say candidly that this part of the script was rewritten many times, because when you truly love something, even as superficial as a game, you want to say why you love it, while attempting not to miss a beat. I would start with how I got into Bioshock. I remember seeing the ad, and initially what made me like it was the art style, in addition to the holographic sleeve that originally came with the PS3 version. I watched gameplay over and over again on YouTube and people raved about the game. So I remember picking up Bioshock with PS3 and attempting to play it whilst overcoming the natural fear of all things scary. It was unlike me to pick a horror-themed game, but there was something about Bioshock that constantly had me coming back. This amazing story with amazing characters who were all flawed, and it brought a sense of realism for me. I was around 15, early teenage years, and I had struggled with religion for many years, being raised Christian but never really believing what I learned. Bioshock reassured me that it was okay to accept atheism for a more logical and grounded approach. By accepting this, I learned so much about other religions and continued to grow open-minded and able to learn. With every playthrough of Bioshock, I learned something new, and it was always exciting. I eventually got better at the game, but I found that the gameplay was never primary. It was a game that delivered on every aspect equally. Listening to the audio diaries, hearing the public announcements, and truly becoming engaged changed my perspective. I remember hearing remorse from Andrew Ryan.
Could I have made mistakes? One does not build cities if one is guided by doubt. But can one govern in absolute certainty? I know that my beliefs have elevated me just as I know that the things I have rejected would have destroyed me. But the city, it's collapsing before my eyes. Have I become so convinced by my own beliefs that I have stopped seeing the truth?
Which made him seem more human. My favorite side story being about Sullivan, who goes from a right-hand Ryan man to an emotional, ethical mess, stuck in a deluded man's dream.
Culpepper. I left her as she was in the bathroom. I seen she had a blanket half knitted by her bed. It was nice, you know, black and red, real pretty. So I took it, so I could, you know, have somebody finish it, so it could be of use to someone. It just didn't seem right to leave it lying there all by itself.
These characters felt real, the city felt real. And to reach that point of legitimacy takes an amazing amount of talent. Bioshock is the reason I love psychology. It fascinated me learning about rapture and how an idea becomes reality with some ambition. I remember doing a few speeches in college about Bioshock to people who've never played a video game before. Bioshock has a lot of substance and a mature audience that many video games don't take advantage of. Bioshock took being a video game to the next level.
We all make choices, but in the end, our choices make us.
At the end of high school, I wanted to meet Ken Levine. I had to meet him. He is one of the creators of Bioshock, and listening to his passion and lectures made him an idol of mine. I got my opportunity to meet Ken Levine in 2012 at PAX East, where he would be discussing a panel entitled Making a Monster. I grabbed the opportunity in an otherwise uncharacteristic move for me at the time. I had never traveled outside of New York City, and I was quite nervous doing it, but I knew it was a chance of a lifetime. I left that night on a very shady Chinese bus to Boston, and with almost no money on me, I stood in a Chase Bank in the freezing cold until the convention opened. I remember finally meeting him, not an hour of sleep in me, but I was entranced as he discussed the upcoming Bioshock Infinite game. A lot of passion and heart, which undoubtedly reflects all the work from him and the team behind him. I think at the moment, what I learned was to find something you love and follow your passion. There are an incredible number of stories and series that have existed throughout the years, but the stories that are timeless are the ones that go above and beyond. They face criticism. They aim to change. They inspire.
Hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people, and so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
Bioshock is not the Citizen Kane of games, nor is it a rendition of 1984. Bioshock is a tragic story that dreams don't always come true. But even at the brink of destruction, you can find beauty. Happy 10 years to Bioshock, and thank you for inviting us to Rapture.
I think Bioshock, and more precisely Bioshock Infinite, made me understand for the first time that video games could be a form of art.
Thank you, Bioshock.
Thank you 2K Games for making an incredible science fiction RPG which was revolutionary in the gaming world.
I've come to see the door to this world. This world has been connected, tied to the darkness, soon to be completely eclipsed. You do not yet know what lies beyond the door. There is so very much to learn. You understand so little. One who knows nothing can understand